My name's Pat Ornge. I am the Special Operations Coordinator here at Ornge. Ornge being the air ambulance or critical care transport provider in Ontario, Canada. I've been with the organization about 30 years. I've held different roles over the years, so everything from education to operational base management. So I've held several leadership positions. Quite involved in developing specialized capabilities for the system in the province of Ontario. We have a province that is geographically dispersed, a large area, so quite a few challenges around surge capacity and our ability to put some of the specialized capabilities that are needed. Ornge is very much a connecting organization. We're primarily doing critical care transport. We do about 20,000 trips a year. We have operational bases scattered throughout the province. They're actually strategically located. We've got fixed-wing aircraft, rotor-wing aircraft. We've got land critical care transport units. And a big part of what we do is inter-facility critical care transport. We are transporting critically ill or injured patients from smaller institutions to larger institutions. A significant component of that is dealing with northern remote Indigenous communities. We have 31 communities that we service that don't have land or road access. And so those communities are simply fly-in communities. In some cases, we're moving patients the equivalent of Toronto down to Florida and back on a daily basis. And so, here out of Toronto, one of our northern bases is Thunder Bay. It's about 1,800 kilometers from here. We use that as a launching point, and then we've got further an operational base about a 5-hour drive north of that. And so we're covering the James Bay coast almost all the way up to Hudson Bay, just to give you an idea of geography. We're involved in doing scene response, so that's the ability to respond to major highway accidents, or sometimes we're going into remote locations. Could be our provincial or national parks where we're picking up injured patients and removing those injured patients over to trauma centers. So there's a little bit of a mix in terms of what we do. So, we're moving adult patients, high-risk obstetrics, pediatric patients, we're moving babies around the province. Coming out of the pandemic, I think there was a recognition that we needed to put some additional capabilities together. So my role as Special Operations Coordinator, we're looking at putting some of those specialized capabilities. So examples include transportation of special pathogens, the ability to support urban search and rescue, the ability to deploy resources and provide surge capacity to under-resourced areas. So that could be some of our northern smaller medical facilities. It could be some of the nursing stations that we help support. But we're also looking at major incident response as part of that capability. Certainly the last couple of years, climate change has been a significant issue. We've seen significant forest fires. I've heard terms that I've never heard before, like derecho or heat dome, and all that has an impact on major populations. And so part of our role and some of the things that we do at Ornge, aside from the day-to-day operations of moving patients from point A to point B, is we really are looking at how we can provide some specialized capabilities within the province of Ontario. We know that the MOVES SLC system has a number of capabilities within that system itself. So it's a combined ICU monitor, it's a ventilator, and it has a O2 concentrator. So, when we look at where we position the MOVES SLC system in our organization, we actually have it as part of our surge kit, and it's used within our special operations program. We've got a number of use of case scenarios. So one of which is being able to support urban search and rescue. So if you've got a major structural collapse somewhere and you've got maybe patients that you can access, that you can resuscitate, and that might mean you're going to intubate them and mechanically ventilate them, but they're still trapped and the extrication is complicated. Historically, what we've had to do is run smaller D cylinders or E cylinders down to the patient. And the problem with that is depending on the minute ventilation on a ventilator, you might get 20 minutes out of a D tank. You might get 40 minutes out of an E cylinder. And so it becomes a logistically complicated to cycle those D and E cylinders into the situation. Well, with the Moves SLC system, provided you got power, you've got the cartridge, it flips the scenario. And so now we've got a situation where we've got, with a single cartridge change, 8 to 10 hours, right, from 20 to 40 minutes. So that's a significant improvement in capability. And in our kits, we carry 3 cartridges. So from a capability standpoint, we're looking at 30 hours of ventilation, provided I've got power, right? And power could be spare batteries or accessing power. We can usually get power. The issue is oxygen. Over the years, I've been involved in a number of disaster exercises and drills, and a lot of times what will happen is like a community hospital will identify a space. It could be a high-skilled gymnasium, it could be a community center where they're going to reposition to that if the hospital infrastructure has been impacted. And on exercise, we've noticed that community hospitals will move an emergency department, or in some cases an ICU, to these buildings of opportunity, and they might move larger M tanks or K cylinders, K tanks, into these areas. But on exercise, you start getting into oxygen duration calculations, and you're talking to the hospitals, and you quickly realize that you have somebody on a ventilator, you might only be able to ventilate them for a few hours. And so your actual capability is quite limited, even in a well-resourced area. And so part of the use case scenario is to redeploy that asset into a building of opportunity. In 2021, July of 2021, Ornge worked very closely with our provincial disaster team, EMAT, and we actually operationally deployed 2 Moves SLC systems for surge capacity into a remote community, Keshechewan, to provide surge support. Part of that surge planning was recreating some medical infrastructure in either buildings of opportunity, or in this case, it was more tent infrastructure. And so the use case scenario there, while the major portion of the operation was providing primary care support, evaluation, and the operational plan was to medically evacuate patients before we had to resuscitate the patient. Sometimes, due to weather conditions, we may not be able to get an aircraft into some of these communities for 2 or 3 days because because the ceilings are too low. And so we pre-positioned Moves SLC systems for a few reasons. 1, if the weather tapped out on us, and 2, if we had to resuscitate a patient, which would require us doing a rapid sequence intubation, intubating them, and then putting them on a vent. And so sometimes there's delays in just medically evacuating patients. That's an example where we actually operationally deployed the Moves SLC system as a bit of a mitigation strategy. It gave us a high degree of confidence that if we had to resuscitate a patient, we had a device available for us to be able to do that. In Ontario, and many jurisdictions have this, we have a standing offer agreement aircraft or carriers that move the lower priority patients. Many of these contracted aircraft, because they're not in a dedicated medical configuration, are reconfigured depending on how they're being used. So, in a major incident, we can cancel these lower priority transfers, and we can quickly reconfigure the aircraft. And the Moves SLC system allows us to do this. To optimize major incident response, we can take one of these aircraft, secure a Moves SLC system into it, and it's going to provide us with ICUS monitoring capability. It's going to provide us with a ventilator. It's going to have the O2 concentrator. So it really provides an opportunity for us to flex when we need to. So we actually took a look at what ICU offloading might look like with the MOVES SLC system. And so, provided it's powered and you've got, the cartridges in place with a CO2 scrubber, it really provides the capability to move these patients over long distances. And so as part of our surge planning now, we're planning to use the MOVES SLC system as an option to be able to move these patients by land over long distances when we don't have access to aircraft. We've identified certain areas for the MOVES SLC system. So for us, I think it's a great device for major incident response. It's a great device to be able to deploy into remote austere environments. So for us, it provides a very specific capability that some of our other equipment items don't have, and we found a home for it because it does fill a gap.